We started? Okie dokie. So today we're thinking about and taking our lead from the Ancraft Trust, and we're thinking about how do we create safer places. And this is something about safeguarding within the community, I think. I've got the privilege today of talking to Bernie Tomlinson. Now, Bernie, I know from a few years ago now, I guess, you worked on the early help side in children's services, and you and I used to see each other on a daily basis because we worked in the same location in the town hall. But for a while now, Bernie, we've not seen a lot of you because, as I understand it, you've been doing other work in other places. So Bernie, would you just mind if you don't mind, just telling us who you are and what it is you do and who you're employed by, if you don't mind?
Yes, okay. So you already know my name. So I'm employed currently by the community safety team, so part of the Trafford Partnerships. I'm still the organised crime group family intervention worker, and currently I'm covering the whole of the borough, as opposed to just one area that I was originally working in when I was on the early help team. So my role involves kind of coming from a victim-based approach, very strength-based. So currently I'm supporting a lot of victims of organised crime. That involves people who may have been victims of, say, somebody cuckooing them, or indeed just their young people have been involved in organised crime, and that's led to a multiple complex situation for them that they feel that they've no way of getting out of. They've been brought to services attention, and prior to and ideally to going down the enforcement line is this where they'll bring me in to deliver a whole family approach to look at the needs of that family. So I'm not going in looking at what the problems are. I'm going in looking at, what the strengths are. So it's not so much a deficit, but a strengths approach.
Brilliant. And so is there a particular area that you've been working in a particular project? Because I guess from this discussion, what I'd really like to demonstrate is the headway that can be made using that strength-based approach, about tapping into community resources, which I know because of the character you are and the enthusiasm you have, you will have achieved that. And
yeah.
So can you tell us about a project?
Yes, so I'll give you an example in the west of the borough. So I was a family intervention worker to several individuals who lived in the same community, and tapped into quite a lot of the females within these households. Whether I was initially engaging with the males or the children, I kind of tapped into the females, recognising that they didn't have a genuine voice in that home environment. I offered them the opportunity, if I was to have a space, would they come together as a group? Would they feel confident, comfortable, safe? They agreed to that. And that's where what we call POP, the Pride of Partington Women's Group, began. So I initiated group activities where we come together, and primarily what I was doing some level of coaching, looking at building resilience, looking at confidence building, linking them into the assets within their own community, helping them to understand their own emotional intelligence of how they regulate themselves and their emotions, looking at what their achievements are, recognising that, celebrating those achievements, and I think just initially kind of connecting them together, which then they became not isolated anymore, became a connected group and started to become really empowered by having this connectivity with each other, having common experiences, recognising that they wasn't on their own, developing that relationship of trust with me, seeing me as an authoritative lead in some ways, but nevertheless somebody who was there who empathise with them, who had also some of those common experiences that I wasn't afraid to share. And that helped to build a positive group environment. Now that group's been going, has sustained itself for 2.5 years, but with this particular group that's running, they've then since become like peer support workers themselves in their community. So instead of cases initially what they do is come to me, because I'm very place-based and I would pick up quite a lot of the early intervention safeguarding issues and signpost people into relevant services. What started to happen is they was doing it themselves. So they come to me for slight guidance without breaking any confidentiality of the person that had come to them. They describe a situation and then off they go, trying to give that person support. So we just started this project before COVID time, and fortunately they've managed to continue it with me as support over the phone mainly, but they're kind of doing it via virtual over the phone, or they'll actually go out and maybe meet that person respecting the social distancing rules, but the coffee shop in that local area is still being open, and there's a wellbeing centre that's open. So these people are still using those services, and that's by the connectivity that they've made together, sense of purpose, giving something back to the community. So the members of that group, albeit I'm not present, are still active within their community. And in some ways, it's helping their own mental well-being, because again, they've got a sense of purpose, and it just seems to be working really well. The feedback I'm getting is really positive.
So this project, Friday Partisan, has been going for 2.5 years.
Yes.
And I think what you're describing is something that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Bernie, but you seem to have initiated it, but it seems in a way to have grown itself and got a life of its own.
Yeah.
So tell me, and now we've got peer support workers that are effectively engaged in things like signposting themselves.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, before COVID, we were actually at the stage of the group becoming self-constituted. So they're at that level as a group of understanding how they need to work as a little small group, levels of communication, how decisions are made, how to problem solve, and overcome barriers. And they've learned all those skills by, I suppose, me delivering that and facilitating that for a period of time. But inevitably, they've gone away with that ability and that confidence to be able to do it themselves.
And how do you know when to step back, Bernie? How do you know what, because you pour that energy and enthusiasm and skills into the start of a project like that, but then at some point you've got to say, well, for this to work, I've got to kind of withdraw a little bit. That must be really difficult.
Yeah, but I think if you're doing your job well, you've worked yourself out of that post, if you like.
Yeah.
Which is inevitable. It becomes a victim of its own success, doesn't it? As it, from a worker's perspective. But that to me, that's true. Community work. It's true asset-based. It's what the community. It's what I believe where communities need to be and where to go is they need to have that resilience. They need to challenge themselves. So predominantly, a lot of the work I do is around crime, and I've encouraged these women to not only challenge themselves, but they're challenging each other, they're challenging other parents, but on a level that's accepted, understood. They might be quite honest and quite brutal with how they might approach that. But not in any way are they being disrespectful or violent. They're just having a voice. They're actually speaking up now for what they feel they're going to accept in their community and what the next generation of young people are growing into. So what I've been able to do is help them find that voice that they never had when they was isolated in their homes, living with all the complexities, and they didn't even realise that was possible.
I mean, okay, so I'm going to ask you a bit of, and I apologise, a bit of an obvious question, but I just want you to spell it out for me more than anything. Why is what you're doing creating safer places?
Well, because it's inevitably it's about changing attitudes, changing belief systems, changing attitudes, changing, people's aspirations and what they want for themselves, the families, and again, giving them that self-belief that, if they're living in challenging times, they're unhappy, there's lots of things, what they would say, going wrong in their lives, then it's about that taking control, self-control, and they're very apt and able to do that. And I believe in people, and I think they get a sense of that. And if I can encourage them to believe in themselves, I feel that we can move milestones.
So, in a sense, Bernie, everything that you said there is, it's kind of, if it can be described as an outreach worker, I don't know if that's an accurate description, but you kind of just allowing people to have a bit more faith in themselves.
Absolutely.
But doing that in a really practical way, which is kind of pointing them in the right direction and nudging them and kind of making them, maybe showing them what's possible in a way.
Absolutely. Over the summer last year, this particular group delivered all the children's packed lunches for the community. So we tapped into housing, who were administering the finance for it, and the women's group. They organised themselves and they delivered a 4-week project in the community, delivering packed lunches to over 200 children a day. They've become very capable adults in that community. So not only are they looking out for people's welfare, as they do the signposting to the early intervention services or commission services, but also they're delivering practical, projects that help to reduce any deprivation and poverty. Whilst they're doing that, they're building further respect and stature in that community. Again, their own confidence and self-esteem. They all want to be social workers now.
Well, I think that's.
They want my job, and that's quite right, and so they should.
Well, I tell you what, that is one very credible measure of success. If you all want to be, one of you.
All want to be a Bernie.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to think about the challenges, you've met along the way, Bernie, and I hope there'll be people listening to this thinking, do you know what? If Bernie can do it in Partington, then I can do it wherever, and elsewhere in Trafford and maybe further afield. Who knows? But so if you were thinking about what has been your worst day? What have been your worst days where even your huge enthusiasm and commitment has been somewhat drained? What have those days been? Or what has that day been?
It's usually when I felt a bit of a blocker that's potentially come from another agency, dare I say, or service. Some of those challenges are obviously, it could be something like the referral process. Somebody's I've met a person, they've opened themselves up to me, it's evident that they need a particular service, they could do with it real quick, and then we hit that hurdle of very long waiting lists or, complex referral systems, or again, it needs a 2 or 3 other professionals before they're then going to get to the stage of getting the right service, i.e. having to go to a GP to get the referral to mental health services or drug and alcohol services when, excuse me, you know, I'm apt, I'm able, I'm paid at a level that potentially I can fill in that application form. And it, you know, in some ways, I think some of my difficulties are the length of time that other services take to respond. Because what's important to these people that you're working with them is that you're responsive and that you're reactive and that you do what you say and that, you know, things are not going to take 6 weeks to turn around. Their lives are very different at that point. And so for me, that's been quite a big challenge. Yeah. Sorry.
Go on. No. So I was saying that sounds like it's a bit of a credibility contract. That, you know, it's, you know, having said, look, I'll, you know, if you know, put your faith in me and you know, open up to me, I'll do this, and this to try and support you. It's about then when you're relying on other agencies to actually facilitate or enable that support, it can sometimes fall down, which I think is, yeah, I think maybe that's something that all professionals feel from time to time.
Yes, and I think that's why, you know, if you use a similar model as the One Trafford response, that enables you to try and break through some of those barriers, in particular for your very complex cases where you've got your multi-agency approach to those meetings. You can take a case and discuss it and hopefully, you know, break down some of those barriers of your time restraints because things are being discussed at a higher level as opposed to at the reception level of a you know, somebody, or an admin level of somebody checking through the referrals of you don't, you know, some of these projects, in particular some of the third sector, dare I say.
Yeah.
That just don't look similar, like we've got internal, it can sometimes work a little bit smoother with internal, or we can overcome those barriers more. But if it's an external agency to us, it's just a little bit more difficult to kind of overcome them. So not that you can't.
No, but what you're alluding to is the frustrations of achieving things and moving forward, particularly for individual cases. Right. So just to conclude, then, and let's finish on a high note. Let's finish on something really positive. In how many ever years' time, Bernie, you sat there on your veranda, on your rocking chair, and you're reflecting on your illustrious career, and you're thinking back to this time when you set up Pride of Partington, and what do you think was your greatest achievement around that? What will you remember when you're rocking away?
Helping people to help themselves.
Fantastic. I think we'll end there, shall we? Shall we end there, Bernie? I think that is about creating safer places. Wonderful.
Absolutely. Okay.
Well, thanks ever so much for your time. I really appreciate that. As I say, it's part of the Ancraft Trust Safeguarding Week of Action, and you know, we really couldn't have a better speaker. So thanks very much.
No problem. My pleasure.
Thank you.